Six Nations 2023, folks. Wales travelling to Scotland. Two teams in pretty different positions at the moment, with the Scots coming off another famous Calcutta Cup win down in Twickenham. First time they've had a 3-win run over the English since, I think, the 1970s. And Wales, sadly for them, with the old Pivac exit and the Gatland return, couldn't give him a welcome return against the number one ranked Irish side. They ended up losing it. But I still think there was a little bit to like about that Welsh performance. We are going to go through some stats from the previous games, the lineups for this week, the recent history between the sides, and the predictions. And you guys can let us know your thoughts. If you can hear that buzzing sound in the background, that's my neighbour mowing their lawn. They've been at it for hours, seemingly. But here we go. The Scots, like I mentioned, they got a good win last week, so they've set themselves up with that opening game win like they have the last couple of years. But the recent history between the sides shows us that they tend to lose this second game against the Welsh. They're as high as they've been in the world rankings in 5th, so it's all there for the taking. They're at home at Murrayfield against a Welsh side kind of struggling. Will they get it done? Well, they've picked a relatively stable lineup to try and get it done. They've got Pierre, Schoeman, George Turner and Zander Fagerson in the front row. The only change of the starting 23... the starting 15 and the 23 entirely is Zander Fagerson's return. He's been out with injury for a while. Gregor Townsend basically said he's been training since the time when they were in Spain. He's been doing full sessions, and he had a training session with Glasgow last week, so they reckon he is good to go, and he must be good to go because he's getting a start. Speaking of starts, Ritchie Gray and Grant Gilchrist continue on. Ritchie Gray I thought was immense last week with his tackling and showing some quick hands as well, plus a bit of work at line-out time. Jamie Ritchie, Luke Crosbie and Matt Fagerson. Matt Fagerson was defensively immense, but then so was Luke Crosbie. He got through a lot of defensive work, which was a huge part of that Scottish win last week, to be fair. Ben White, Finn Russell continue on. Finn Russell continues to divide opinion as to whether he had a imperious controlling game last week, spreading that ball wide, or whether his kind of decision making sometimes kind of let them down. He certainly put a lot of boot to ball in a game which was, well, they were kind of forced to at times when England would try to put them on pressure with boot. Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones, that midfield combo continues on. Very attacking orientated. I, for one, am a full fan of this. Kyle Steyn and Duhan van der Merwe. Steyn's pretty much getting forgotten because it's all about Duhan with that wonder try he scored last week, and then the powerful one he scored later on. That'll be giving some of the Welsh defenders nightmares, but surely he can't do that 2 weeks in a row. And then Stuart Hogg there at fullback as well, kind of has just had a lock on that 15 jersey for what seems like a long time. I wouldn't want to be kicking him the ball too much because he'll be certainly looking to 50-22 it if you give him a chance. Replacements, Brown, Bhatti and Nell. Nell drops down to the bench after starting last week. Jonny Gray, Dempsey, Horne, Kinghorn and Harris. So like I said, very, very stable 23 compared to the one that played last week with just the one change in the propping stocks. Not quite so consistent for Wales. Warren Gatland has made a few changes, and he basically said in his press conference, where he seemed a little bit miserable, I watched the Andy Farrell one and then I watched the Warren Gatland one, and the difference was easy to see for anyone, but I mean, I guess two teams in very different situations, so maybe that's understandable. Maybe Warren Gatland is still getting over a bit of jet lag. I'm not sure, but maybe just sick of answering those questions. But he basically said in his press conference that he's told the experienced guys, who's been a little bit criticised for picking, they're going to be rotated in and out of the squad because he needs to get some game time into the youngsters as well. And that's basically, he's pulled the trigger on that one. So Wyn Jones is back, so he's been injured for a wee while. He's back and he's starting to loose head. Ken Owens and Dillon Lewis, that's the front row. So only Ken Owens keeps his same jersey number from last week. Wyn Jones is in from outside the squad and Dillon Lewis is up from the bench. Dafydd Jenkins is there alongside Adam Baird. So Adam Baird swaps jersey numbers in terms of his lock-in. He's from 4 to 5. Whether he locks the scrum in a different position, I'll be curious to see, because I swear they've played that trick before where it doesn't actually make a difference for them. But that means there's no Alan Wynne. Alan Wynne's not even in the 23, but like I said, Gats said he spoke to him about this situation prior to the Six Nations, so it's not like he's being punished. He's not being This isn't his career done. It's just a planned bit of rotation. So it's a good chance to get some experience. So there you go. You can agree with that. Tshiunza, Reffell, and Jack Morgan. That's your back row. Tshiunza, I don't think was quite 100% last week, but I think there will be many people pleased to see that guy get a run because he's a big physical specimen as well. And when you've seen him play for Exeter, he does look the business. Hopefully he can replicate that kind of form in Welsh colours. Reffell gets a nod ahead of Tipuric, who's another one who gets a little bit of rotation. And I remember watching Reffell down in South Africa, right? He was one of the stars of that tour for Wales. So pleased to see him get some more game time. And then Jack Morgan, I thought, was genuinely the most effective of the Welsh ball carriers last week when they were kind of getting shut out of the game by the Irish defenders. Jack Morgan, I think, looked the busiest. So his shift to number 8, according to Gats, is because if Faletau gets injured, they don't really have a set replacement at number 8. So they're basically giving someone else a turn. Faletau is on the bench for this one, so it's a good chance for Jack Morgan anyway until Talupe comes on. For the backs, Thomas Williams, Dan Biggar, that's the same as last week. Joe Hawkins, George North, same as last week. Joe Hawkins, I thought, genuinely looked sharp. George North, I wasn't as convinced personally. Yeah, there's been a few games for Wales now where he's been at 13. I just thought he looked a bit quiet, Sometimes a bit passive, not that kind of devastating ball carrier that we expect him to be. I don't know, man. We'll watch that one with interest anyway. He's a big guy, so he's certainly bigger than Tuipulotu and Jones in the opposition midfield. So we'll see if he's able to get any chances to run at them. Rio Dyer and Josh Adams. I thought Dyer looked pretty sharp last week as well. Looks like a dangerous carrying option. And then Liam Williams, speaking of looking sharp, man, apart from his yellow card, I thought he looked all right, man. Looking to run back some kicks and beat a few defenders. So yeah, that is the starting 15. As I said, a few changes. Scott Baldwin, Reece Carey, and Leon Brown are the front row replacements. Leon Brown comes into the squad having not played for Wales for what seems like for ages. Reece Davis is another one of these inexperienced guys who wants to get some minutes into. Faletau, as I mentioned, Reece Webb, Reece Patchell. Basically, if your name's Reece, there's a good chance you're on the bench for this one. And Alex Cuthbert is there as well. So, yeah, a much more changed lineup than what we've seen from some of the other squads. The Irish one's pretty stable. The French one's pretty stable. The Scottish one's pretty stable. Certainly the most changes so far is this Welsh squad. But, with such a short prep time and a World Cup on the horizon and a bunch of youngsters coming through and a bunch of experienced guys still around the knocking about, Gats is doing what he's got to do, I guess. Stats-wise, last week, man, Wales had 14 turnovers conceded, which is the most of any of the sides. And they also conceded 15 penalties, which is second only to France, who had a horrendous one with the ref, whatever it is, in their game against Italy. So I don't think Wales can be that bad in both areas 2 weeks running. I swear they're going to clean that up. They're going to drop less ball. I'm convinced this is going to happen. They were equal with the French, the Scots, and the Irish with 6 clean breaks. All those teams had 6 clean breaks. It's just they weren't able to finish the same chances that the other sides were able to finish, right? So if the Welsh can generate the same chances, drop a bit less ball, concede a few fewer penalties, I reckon it's going to look a lot rosier for the boys in red. For Scotland, obviously all the talk's about Duhan van der Merwe after last week, the wonder try. But honestly, 214 tackles at 91% is mind-blowing. Like that performance, given how little possession they had and little territory, it was a win built on a solid defensive effort and then taking some bloody good chances. So, I mean, for context, 214 tackles. The next most was Wales with 184. So still a big difference. Like some of the teams, like England was like 100 because they had all the ball against Scotland. So, a lot of defensive work from that Scottish outfit. Will Scotland kick Wales the ball? Will Wales kick Scotland the ball is the line I meant to go with because we saw what Scotland could do on kick return. So that's going to be a fascinating one to watch in its own. The recent record, as I kind of said earlier, it's pretty much all Wales. 4 of the last 5, and if you go beyond the last 5, the majority of the recent wins, if you can call them recent, are Welsh. There's very few Scottish wins in recent times. I mean, Wales have absolutely had the wood over the Scots. The last result at Murrayfield was also a Welsh win. That was back in 2021. In 2019 they played at Murrayfield as well. It was a Welsh win. Still close games like 18-11, 25-24. The most recent Scottish win and the only one of the last 5 was at the Parker Scarlets. That was during the old COVID days, wasn't it? When the Millennium was being used to treat COVID patients. So that was a tight one, 14-10. But as I said, that's the only recent win the Scots have had over the Welsh. So the average score is still pretty tight, 19-15 to the Welsh. So they tend to be pretty low scoring affairs. The highest scoring one was that 25-24 back in 2021. Generally, one side or both sides scores fewer than 20 points. So yeah, take that into account with your predictions, folks. Scotland with the bookies are 6-point favourites. And the Rugby Forecast algorithm, which I should say is run by a Scotsman, has the Scots by 15, although I think it's an algorithm rather than a bit of bias in there. But 15 points, given their recent history, would be a massive, massive win. It is on at Murrayfield. It's on Saturday. It's a 4:45 local kickoff, which is 5:45 for those of us in New Zealand, which is pretty horrendous, but we'll have been up since 3:15 for the previous game anyway. It's on the BBC, on the iPlayer, so you guys in the UK can stream it or watch it for free. For those of us outside that territory, you can watch it on the iPlayer with a VPN, basically like this. Connect to a UK server, get on the BBC website and stream the game. When you log in, you might have to give them a postcode, but that's easily Googleable. But yeah, there you go, folks. You guys let us know your thoughts. Do you think the recent run of Welsh success will continue? Will Scotland once again manage to beat England in round 1, lose to Wales in round 2? Or do you think Wales at the moment, with all these changes, are not going to be at that same level, and this relatively strong-looking Scottish side, I say relatively, man, it's a bloody strong Scottish side, is going to be too good at home? You guys let us know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.